All right, welcome back, and let's continue our discussion on Division 1, Chapter 1, this general requirements. This part 2, the second part in this lecture series, involves chapters 1.6 to 1.9, or the second half of Chapter 1. And a big piece of this part of the chapter, the second half, deals with documents and the project administration. So this is somewhat of an overview slide of what we're going to be talking about as far as drawing specifications, project manuals. What are they? What do they look like? What do they do and don't include? And how are they organized? Looks like some bad formatting we got going on there. We got dots and dashes. We got everything going on. Also, bidding and negotiations, contract administrations, and some responsibilities of the CM, construction manager. So let's dive right in and start with this whole idea of contract documents. When we talk about this general idea of contract documents, there can be two different types, either written or drawn, meaning drawn is what you think of when you think about opening up a big set of plans, and those plans will have things like elevation sections or plan view sections, like a bird's eye view looking down on the building with all the dimensions and different parts and pieces called out. As far as the written part, we have a project manual, which usually has more of the bidding requirements, what's required to put together a bid, which we'll talk about in just a little bit here. Also, any forms, conditions, specifications is probably one of the bigger things. And when we talk about specifications, we're really saying, what type of, it might be something like what strength concrete is needed, or how fast are you pouring the concrete, what's max rate of pour, or something. It could be something detailed like that, or something a little more general in your specifications bit. Now you will see that this says it follows master format. Now, I don't think we've talked about master format in here yet, but this whole PowerPoint presentation was called Division 1, right? And I never really explained what that division really means or why these divisions are here, 116 or 149, but it's all based on this thing called a master format. So what is this master format? This was something that came around after World War II, when construction was booming, and it seemed like there were so many different methods to write these construction documents down. And this was a way to standardize it so that we're all on the same page when it comes to numbering, so we can find out information. It's a way of labeling all of our information. It's put together by the Construction Specification Institute, CSI, not Crime Scene Investigation, but Construction Specification Institute. And like I said, it's a system to organize all of this information, because there's so much information with this documentation and everything. And that way, we can all be on the same page. If I want to find something about concrete, I know to go to section 3 and so on and so forth. So this, like I said, it started way back when, maybe not that well before most of you were born, probably. And it stayed the same until 95. And up until 95, it was divided into 16 primary functions. General requirements, site construction, concrete, masonry, metals, so on and so forth. And those 16 covered pretty much everything that was going on in the construction world. And so if I wanted to know what specific, or how to label the section that dealt with what kind of concrete I needed for this particular project, I knew that it would be labeled in my section 3. Well, after a while, we started coming up with more and more sections, and in 2004, they decided to do a massive overhaul and change the 16 and up it to 50. So now there's 50 divisions instead of just the 16. There were some minor revisions throughout the years after that, and there's still some placeholders where they can make some more revisions, but basically we're dealing with 50 right now. I don't expect you to know all 50. I think it might be good to know these 16. I mean, you can always look it up, right? As long as you know where to find it, I think is going to be the key. And some of them will be a little more evident than others. And basically with these 50, the way they went from 16 to 50, the first thing they did is they introduced these subgroups. They introduced section 00, which is procurement and the contracting process, right? And then they have section 1, general requirements. You can see these are subgroups. So we have, after that, we have this facility construction subgroup. And you can see this item 2 or section 2 was site construction before, now it's existing conditions, but pretty much the same. The other from 3 up to this, 13 are all the exact same. So those are labeled at least the same. Concrete is 3 now, concrete was 3 before. Go back and check it if you don't believe me. So, and like I said, we do have some reserved sections, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, because we don't know what's going to come up in the future. And I think master format said that let's go ahead and just keep this open for however we want to modify it. So we don't have to have another major revision and make it 100, right? Now that was going back. This is the facility construction subgroup, or really I think it's more just the construction subgroup versus facility services. So these are the services, fire, plumbing, HVAC, electrical. You can see the numbers are going on. So this guy brought us up to the 19. Now we're at 20, up to 29, a couple reserved ones in there as well. And this will give you a little example of how it was changed from the original 16. What else? So this is the infrastructure, site and infrastructure subgroup. And we talk about the site, we're talking more like earthwork, and infrastructure would be more like the utilities and transportation piece of it. And you can also, once again, see how it compares to the previous 1995 version. So the two big things that came out that you should be aware of is the 95, and it's limited 16 sections versus the 2004 with its 50, right? Now that brings us up to 39 with the infrastructure. And then rounding it out, we also have our process equipment subgroup, and you can read through those as well. Now you can see it goes to 49. It means there's 50 because we did add that 0 in there as well with the general requirements. So that's what it looks like for the master format. That's our numbering process. And I'm trying to incorporate this a little bit into the class with these divisions. Our textbook actually does it as well. If you look at our textbook chapters, I keep saying chapter 3 or 3, so 3 being concrete for our designation for the master format. Well, it's the same as far as our chapter in the book. And if you look at chapter 4, what is chapter 4? Masonry, then we could imagine that 4 in master format would be masonry. As far as numbering within the master format, it's a 6-digit format type of number or coding for everything. The first 2 numbers are that division, like 03 is concrete. The second 2 numbers are the level, so this would be like 20, and 20 in this example here is concrete reinforcing. And the last 2 numbers, or the third set of 2, is the third level. So within concrete, maybe we're going to be talking about rebar. Now there is a link over here to the CSI standards master format. At first I thought this would be a good place to go so that we could play around and look at some of this, but unfortunately it seems like they really want us to be members to be able to poke around in there. And I mean, you could probably go to Wikipedia or some other place like that where some other people put it down. But I also found this example. This is actually, this has this is the basic same master format process and numbering and everything else. So I figured this is a good place to look at. So if I wanted to look at metals, I could click on metals, and then within metals, I can see the same. Now it's nice they put this little space in there. You can see. So 05 is metals. 01 would be the maintenance of metals, and then this other last 2 digits like 50 clearly is fabrication, 70 is decorative metals, and so on and so forth. So you can see how that whole thing would lay out, and you can also imagine how big this gets when you add them all up. I mean, that's just the metals piece of it, and we still have 50 sections of this whole thing, right? I'm not exactly sure what this site does. If I click on one in particular, I thought, looks like they have pretty much nothing there. So not too exciting. I know I was looking earlier and I did concrete formwork and shoring from my background. It actually had some people who do that work, which I thought was interesting, and links to their websites. And I guess it's just a site where you can link up for whatever you're looking for. But let's get back to this PowerPoint. This is an example of some project. What is it? Centennial High School. When it looks like there was a renovation at Centennial High School, which is here in Fort Collins, and you can see the layout of this document where we do have concrete, and we're in section 3, and then 30, which would be cast in place type concrete, so on and so forth. So that's just an example of what it would look like. This would be like a cover sheet, and then what you would do is you go to this section and you could actually read about the requirements for this project for their cast in place concrete piece of it, right? So really, what you should be aware of is that this master format is just a way to organize all of our information so that all projects look the same. If I go to section 05120, it should be structural metals at any project. So I don't know, it seems like it's helpful. So after that, let's move into bidding and negotiation and what that looks like. So when we talk about bidding, what we're really talking about is the process of preparing some documents and then coming up with a way that that the contractors can generally say, I can do this project for this amount of money, right? And bidding on the job to see if they can get it. Now, the process of doing this, there are a couple different methods. I'll talk about in just a little bit. Some of it depends on how the job's going to be played out or the project's going to be managed. But two basic differentiations would be bidding, where you're basically saying this is the project, and then everyone comes in with this is how much I'll pay, this is how much I'll pay. And generally, you're going with the lowest bid, the cheapest people who can actually build the project. The other would be negotiation, where as an owner and my design team, my architects and engineers may come up with the drawings and a cost that we think it would, or a budget that we have, or a cost that we think it is going to take to build it. And then we go to the contractors and say, okay, this is our project. This is what we're willing to pay to get this project done. After we do that, then the contractor can either say, great, I'll do it, or they can come back and say, no way, you're crazy, and this is what it would take in order to get this job done. Or I guess in the real rare circumstance, maybe they come back and say, you're paying me too much. You don't have to pay me that much, but I doubt that ever happens. So to getting more particular, that bidding process does depend on the delivery system, which is a contract type, right? And the two primary ones you hear most about are design, bid, build, and design, build. Sometimes DBB and DB. Too many acronyms in this class. So, and then sometimes you'll hear this third, construction management. So with a design, bid, build, that's probably the one you would think of first when we think about the process, the general contracting process. This is where you have a sequential process where you have the owner contacts the design team, meaning the architects and engineers. They draft up the plans. After the plans are done, they put them in a location where they can be bid on by contractors. They go with the lowest bid. Then the contractor is obligated to build the project. It's all sequential. Nothing happens before the next one is done. You do go with the lowest bidder. And what does it say? Single or multiple prime contractors? Yeah, okay. The second one, a design build, is a little different because what you're doing is you're bringing on that. You start the design team with the architect and the engineer, but now you're bringing in the general contractor from the very beginning. So basically, it's a process where you have the general contractor who's going to be building this project is working with the engineer and architect while it's going on, meaning during the project. So it's a designing while you're building. Maybe that's what they should call this, a design build, because the design isn't done when construction starts. There's a thought process and they're ahead of the curve, but it's more flexible in that way where if you need changes, well, the changes are all ongoing, and it's more of a team design type of thing. Typically, this was considered more the fast track method, meaning it's quicker to get done because you're not waiting for all the designs to be done before you start building. And so it cuts out some of that lead time necessary. The third style here, construction management, is more just it's almost similar to the design build, but you just hire this one construction management firm or person to just oversee the entire project. And so that could be fast track or not, as you see. Looks like then there's a little definition of fast track, general contractor brought on early, documents issued as needed. All right, yeah. So same idea where we're just doing it as quickly as possible. by generating the needed documents, but not before work starts. When we talk about selecting bidders for a project, there are three different methods. One is an open bid. It's usually like for government, public projects, because you have to worry about discrimination or the potential for discrimination if you didn't do that. So if you're a government entity or if it's a public works project, then you have to open up to everyone, right? There's no reason to rule out anyone else as long as they are licensed contractors. And basically, the idea is that the bid, anyone who is a licensed contractor can bid on that project. Lowest bid gets it, because once again, if you don't take the lowest bid, then there could be questions of favoritism or possibly any prejudice views on how certain contractors were selected. Another option would be a short list. This is more like private projects where basically if I am looking for someone to complete a project for me as an owner, I might have like 4 or 5 contractors that I worked with in the past or no, and I'm just saying, okay, I know you, I'm going to use you, and you, and bring these people together to complete this project. So a short list meaning you might have multiple ones that you still want, you still want to get the best bid for the price. So this is, like calling up to get some plumbing work done in your house, and you call 3 different people and you figure out who you're going to use. You're not bound to just taking the lowest price. Now you're taking into consideration of, what they look like. Not, as far as like a quality company versus a shady, just nothing established type company, or what you're going to go with. And then the third is a pre-qualified. It's a way to, it's almost like in between the two. So it's an open bid as long as you meet these pre-qualifications. And there could be some other criteria such as contractor qualification statement listed in the A305 document of AIA. So when you're putting together a bidding package, meaning this is what you're going to give the people who are interested in providing a bid, right? What are you going to give them so they can create their bid? What do they need? Well, they need instructions, like what's the process going to look like? When are things due? There's going to be bid forms. And this is really to keep the formatting looking all the same, because these bid proposals can be kind of thick sometimes. And if you're trying to compare company A versus company B, you want to look at what each line item is going to look like so you can compare apples to apples, right? As opposed to something like, just trying to figure it out. So these forms just make it a little more uniform so that everyone's bids look the same. Any kind of bonding information that might be necessary. Any agreements between the owner and contractor might be listed in the bid package as well. Drawings are probably the most important things. What's the project going to consist of? What's it going to look like? Parts and pieces. You can count up all the necessary stuff. The project manual. In the project manual, you would have more of those specifications of how the project needs to be done, and any addenda that are added to the end of the bid package. And this would be an example from that same Centennial High School instruction to bidders, and you can see that there's some specifics that it's given to the bidders so that they know exactly what they need to do or what they are responsible for, and when they can account for everything when they're putting together their bid to have an accurate bid. Contract administration. So this is a particular instance where you want your architects and engineers in the project from the beginning and staying there until the end. So this is much easier in like a design build type of process as opposed to design bid build. And the reason being is because you have this team together, and your architects and engineers, your design team, can do things like hold these pre-construction conferences, and make sure everyone's on the same page and answer any type of questions. They can review the submittals and do the field inspections and answer questions, do change orders and progress meetings, and you can read all this. But they can also make sure that the work was done the way it's supposed to be done before they can say, okay, you did do everything according to what the original design was. I mean, if I'm the one who designed the project, I would be the one to say it was built the way it was designed. Therefore, you can get paid right? So all of that can be done by the design team if they are utilized throughout. If you just use the design team in the very beginning, get the design, and then they are done with the project and you are on your own, then you have to take care of all this. You meaning whoever you are, probably a general contractor or whoever else it might be. So let's see, we have a contractor responsibilities pre-contract award. So before this is all a process of getting that bid in, right? How are you going to, from a contractor point of view, how are you going to get this bid an accurate bid? And you need to prepare your takeoffs, meaning you're going to count all of your parts and pieces and beams and square footage and to figure out what it would cost in materials. And let's see, ensure that all the subcontractors are bidding in accordance with specifications. Yeah, so as a contractor, you're going to have subcontractors. Maybe you're subcontracting out the form work for the concrete or something, and you have to make sure that those subcontractors are doing what they need to do to meet those specifications and to have an accurate piece of their part of the bid, because you're going to take their number and add it to yours, right, for the overall bid. Make sure that all bids cover the entire scope of the project. You don't want to leave something out, because if you leave something out, then you're the one who's going to eat it because it isn't in your bid. Obtain all information from the design team. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. So you want all the drawings and specifications, and if something's unclear, you need to ask questions and figure that out. It's your responsibility, the contractor's responsibility, to get clarity to build this bid. Also, creating these avenues for communication, which will be used later on. Request for information is usually after the project starts. You're like, well, what did you mean by this? Or I need more information on this, and you can have a form for that, or document clarification, same idea. From a contractor's perspective, after they get the award, after they have put in their bid was accepted, what does it look like from their perspective? What do they need to do? So they're looking at getting the product data, shop drawings, test reports, samples of materials to be used on the project. So they have to accumulate all of this stuff so they make sure they're doing it the way it needs to be done. Let's see, they have to get all their submittals to the design team to be, assuming the design team is still used in the process, like we said earlier. But submitting these submittals, or submitting, I guess it is submitting submittals, to the design team to get approval as work is going along, or preferably before work goes, because you don't want to have to redo something, right? Let's see, order long lead items, meaning it's going to take a while to get something in. You want to be ahead of the time. It's more of scheduling, making sure you're on top of what's coming up further down the line, and being aware of that. Start on the site as far as clearing it out, grubbing, which is like skimming the surface, getting the top surface. Order your concrete, get everything going. So this would be an example of some submittals. So when we said send submittals to the design team for review, what kind of submittals might be needed? These would be a typical set of submittals that, as a contractor, you need to submit, like product data, shop drawing samples, manufacturer certificates, so on and so forth. And this would all be stored in some place, probably by multiple people, right? So that's what I have for this presentation, ending out what we can now call Division 1, and which lines up with Chapter 1, Design and Contracting Requirements. Hope that was somewhat informative. Let me know if you have any questions or comments as always. Otherwise, we'll see you next time. Thanks.